Welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast, the podcast that gives you immediate actions you can take to start seeing life-shifting results now. Hey everybody, welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast. This is Mark Cardone.
And Theron Feidt.
I'm so excited to be doing this podcast today. I feel like we have a lot of conversations with people, and I see this as a coach, as a broker, as all the things that I am. People often really rally into the fact that they need to be correct. Like
Yeah.
they want to be right. And sometimes I think what happens is people will argue how right they are,
hmm
despite, you know, all the truth, all the proof, all the things, right? I mean, for example, like in real estate, I'll tell somebody like these are the three things that I do every day that
Yeah.
help me build a successful business, right?
Right.
And they'll say, no, 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 like I want to do it this way. And I go, that's great, like do it that way. But then
hmm
when it doesn't work, they try to lean into it, and they
Yeah.
lean into it so hard that they never open up to get to what the truth is and what the actual like things are they have to do.
Yeah. And, getting down to the root of it, it comes from ego, right?
Hmm.
And we're all born with that ego that it's all about me. And if you think of a child, and it needs to be that way, because you need to develop yourself. But then as we grow and get older, and hopefully we're raising kids properly, and if you, and by the way, we just released a podcast on this a little while ago on raising self-reliant kids. Check that out if you haven't. But getting into back into the ego thing, and so it's really a protection mechanism, that we think, and it's not even conscious half the time, it's in our subconscious that if I'm wrong, I'm a bad person and it's bad
Right.
for me, and so it's a self-protection that really we need to wake up. We need to wake up about that. Okay, well, I'm doing this because I'm going to feel less than the other person.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
as we're taking notes for this, a quote came up and I want to read this real quick. And the quote was, "Don't let your need to be right be more important than your need to find out what's true."
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I want to kind of preface this because as we're talking about overcoming our ego,
hmm
to live a better life, right? Which
Yeah,
I think is
for sure.
important. I can think about and I can remember moments in my life where, I've seen shifts in this because obviously when you're young, when I
Mhm.
was, 15, 16 years old, everything I did was right. Yeah, like it was,
Yeah.
I knew everything and I was
Your
good.
parents didn't know anything.
Didn't know anything. Nobody knew
Yep.
anything. I knew
Yep.
everything. I knew what was best for me and all the things. And now that I'm older, I look back and go, I really didn't know anything. And that
Yeah.
humility that comes with that, which I
Yep.
know a lot of our listeners who are older know this, right? Like hopefully they've developed that humility over time,
hmm
and where it gets tricky is there's that part in the middle where we're not really young, we're not really, old and wise yet, but we're in the middle. And a lot of our listeners are there where they still have that kind of edge of ego that keeps them from getting to the next level.
Yeah. And it takes work. You got to work on yourself. That's one of the ideas why we did this podcast, started almost 20 or 10 years ago, is
Yeah.
to really help ourselves, because ultimately when we're going through this and doing the research and coming up with ideas, or we read a book, this was from a book and reminder, and I've known this for quite a while, but it kind of spurred this whole idea of this podcast, that we're here, we're helping ourselves, reminding ourselves, learning also, but also to help everybody else,
Yeah.
because ultimately we want to make sure that you are achieving more results. And it's not about money or your career alone. It's really about life, and,
Yeah.
and how do you have a better life? Well, you have to work at it. You have to
And,
learn, you have to grow as a person. And I think
and
this is a very important part
yeah.
to do that.
And I think this is important for two reasons. Number one, because I think it helps you move forward in your life and in your just personal development. But the other thing is, like when you're interacting with other people, like I think it makes your
Yeah.
relationships better too.
Yep.
Because if you're somebody who always has to be right, always has to win the
hmm
argument, always has to, be the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
What do they say? If you're the smartest person in the room, you might be in the wrong room, right?
Right.
But if you're that type of person, moving to, this kind of, truth over ego mentality will
hmm
help you build those better relationships and be more likable.
Yeah, because the rest of the title is it's three-step guide to finding clarity and achieving results. And that's ultimately what we want to do. We want to find clarity if we're having a disagreement in our head or we think we're right, and learning from the other person. I love what you said there about relationships because it really truly is. If you're an adult, I'm sure we all had friends growing up that was the know-it-all friend. And how annoying was that person, right? Hopefully it wasn't you. And if it was you, hopefully you made some changes. But that person's so annoying. And unfortunately, oftentimes they turn into adults that are still annoying, that they have
Yeah,
to, step in and they say, oh, but this or that. And don't be that person, because nobody likes that person as the know-it-all.
right.
Try to listen more and try to learn, and sometimes not saying anything is fine too.
And that
You
that
don't have to butt in.
that leads us right into our first step, which, like
Yep.
beautiful, beautiful layup getting into
Thanks.
it, but it's practicing the I could be wrong mindset, and
Yeah.
I preface this, because I think a lot of people do this and they say, well, I could be wrong, but,
Yeah.
and that's
Hmm.
not how that's not the right way to do it.
No.
It's about really acknowledging the possibility that you
Yeah.
are incorrect, like internalizing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other part of that is shifting the mindset. Is your mindset to win the argument, to win the discussion, to dominate, or is your mindset to learn? That's vastly different outcome and vastly different relationship building versus tearing down you're going to have by just changing the mindset to learning from what it was winning.
Yeah. And I really like that learning versus winning. Yeah, I remember a long time ago I worked with somebody who they would frequently use the phrase, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking about that and hearing them say that. Like, somebody would ask a question, they'd be like, you know what, I don't
Hmm.
really know the answer to that. It was always followed up with, but let
But
me
let me
think
find
about it.
out.
Let me learn a
Yeah,
little
let me
more and
think
let me
about
get
it.
back
Yep.
to you.
Yep. Yep.
But I think having like it takes a lot of courage
Yeah.
to say to people like, I don't know the answer to that, because I think we're so quick to develop opinion,
Hmm.
and then, as we get older, opinion becomes law, right? Like our
Yeah.
opinion is right. So I think it's important to be able to say, geez, man, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Let me think about it, let me pray on it, let me read about it,
Right.
and let me get back to you, because
Yeah.
that's really how we grow.
Yeah. Because all of this, what that does is that mindset, those questions, it lowers your defenses, and therefore you can learn more and you're open to information.
Yeah.
Because ultimately we should be trying to learn every day, and
Yeah.
we have obviously in our pocket, our phone, we always talk about that. We have all this knowledge and information, and that's great, and that can be utilized, especially with AI now. However, the person in front of you or the group that you're around, you can learn so much from them.
Yeah.
And not just regular knowledge, but just how they interact with people. Their temperament. And look at in the dojo. How often do you see a lower rank teach something? You're like, wow, they did a really good job.
Yeah.
I can use part of that. Now here
Yeah.
you're their teacher, but the way they approach this particular student was better than what you're doing currently, right? Having that open mind as a high ranking instructor is how you become a higher ranking instructor
Yeah.
because you're open to all possibilities. We have some awesome junior instructors here, and you're really good at working with our little dragon program, the 3 to 6 year olds. But you see some of them how good they are,
Yeah.
right? It's
Hmm.
amazing. It really
It
is.
is.
And so that's about not having an ego. Hey, I'm this high-ranking black belt that I've been there for decades. I know better than you. My 6th degree black belt, which was years ago, is older than you. I
Yeah.
mean, like having that ego, that would be wrong thinking.
Yeah.
That's not going to make you learn and grow. So that's why these steps of I could be wrong or there's a better way
Yeah.
really makes a difference.
And, it's funny because there's so many things I think about that I'm usually wrong about. Um, and who knows what's right and what's right. It's just, you really
Yep.
have to truly get to the next one here. I'm getting to it. You have to be able
Yep.
to understand,
Yep.
right? Not just argue. So focus on, so
Hmm.
step two, focus on understanding and not just arguing,
Right.
so, and I love this as a, you know, tool that we use when we're working with people,
Hmm.
where it's very easy as experts, right? As experts for us to say, this is the correct way, and we bury our
Hmm.
heels in, right? This is
Yep.
the right way
Yep.
to do it. It's kind of what you were just talking about.
Yeah.
But sometimes it makes a lot of sense to understand where
Hmm.
the other people are coming from. Put
Right.
yourself in the shoes,
Hmm.
of the people that you're talking to, and really try to develop an understanding, because even if you're correct, even if your way's right, even if it is, people like to feel heard. People
Hmm.
like to know that you understand, right? I mean, Stephen Covey, seek first to understand,
Right. Then to be
then to be
understood. Yep.
understood. I think this is just a universal law.
Yeah. Yeah. So specifically, one of the action steps within this step would be that listening actively. So not listening to reply or listen to wait to reply. So you're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So in your mind, you're like, yeah, yeah, Mark. Yep, yep, I got it. Yep, Mark. And then you say what you're going to say, and it just doesn't match anything that you said. Um, that's something to work on. Are you actively listening? Are you trying to understand as you're listening?
Yeah, 100%. And I love when people say things and then you respond with questions. Like responding with
Yep.
questions is
Right.
really one of the best ways to keep conversation going. And to
Hmm.
people listening, being good at conversation is one of
Yeah.
those attributes that helps people, who are in the top tier of their industries, who are good in
Right.
their family,
Hmm.
they're very good at this. But asking clarifying questions, using open-ended questions like,
Right.
can you help me understand that? Can you tell me more about that?
Right.
When your kids come home and they say, I had a terrible day at school today, saying, well, geez, like, was it one class? Was it the whole day? Tell me
Right.
more about what
Right.
happened, and not just
Yep.
brushing it off as, oh, you'll be fine. It'll be good.
Yeah.
Um, really having those conversations and asking those questions to clarify what's going on.
Right, right. And then it's always good to also, once you've done those questions, and then sometimes you do some questions, you go back, but to restate, what their points are. Restate, maybe it's a challenge they're having, restating the challenge and restating in the words that you understand that you
Yeah.
heard. And what that does is they'll be like, well, that's not exactly what I meant, and then they can correct you. But by restating it, also it helps them clarify because we've all had people that are upset, that have a problem, and they're not clear on what the exact problem is. They just feel that it's a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's real to them, so let's dig in. So by you explaining the problem and verbalizing it, that helps them clarify in their head. And it helps both of you mutually understand each other. So either you can solve the problem or just learn.
Yeah, this is funny. I always think about doctors when I think about this step, because
Okay.
this helps you be more prescriptive, in your
Hmm.
approach with people.
Yeah.
Because, I think it was Stephen Covey who said this, but, like if you go to the optometrist and you say, I'm having trouble seeing, and
Yeah.
the optometrist gives you his glasses and says, there you go, all better,
Right.
right? It
Right.
doesn't, it doesn't do the thing, and I think
Mm-mm.
what we have is we have people who come up and they'll say, I'm having a bad day, right?
Yeah.
And the number of symptoms that could be in there, so
Right.
really, like, I think clarifying is important, but then I think restating, summarizing and saying, okay, just so I understand, like, math class, you had a bad test and that kind of turned you for the rest of the day, and and understanding that
Right.
gives them the opportunity to say, no, 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 like that, it wasn't that, or yeah, that's
Right.
exactly what it was. And then from there, you can be more helpful, or you can
Right.
just, show that you actually care enough
Yeah.
to
Hmm.
listen and understand. And I think that's
Right.
huge.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. And this leads us to our third action step, which of course has sub action steps within it. And this is seeing mistakes and disagreements as opportunities.
Yeah.
And this is something that you and I have done for decades
Yeah.
in the dojo, and I did use the word problem, but usually what I always use, and is opportunity,
Yeah.
you know, or we can soften the word problem to a
Mhm.
challenge. That's
Yeah.
another thing you can do. And even though you might initially think it's just semantics, it makes a difference. It lowers the temperature. And it is the truth. Anytime there's a challenge or disagreement or anything, or you make a mistake, there's a chance to learn and get better.
Yeah.
That's that we learn far more from our mistakes than all of our successes.
We do, and it's funny, when you view being wrong as a win, as
Hmm.
an actual win,
Yep.
it's
Right.
amazing how many people you talk to who say they're lifelong learners, but then they say they hate to be wrong.
Right.
Like
That doesn't
like
track. Yeah.
it doesn't go together. Like if you're a lifelong learner, then those mistakes, those times when you're incorrect are learning opportunities for you, both
Hmm.
the thing that you
Hmm.
were incorrect about, but also in the way you handled the situation you were incorrect
Right.
in,
Right.
and how your thought process worked. So I think, really viewing it from that winner's mindset of,
Hmm.
hey,
Yep.
being wrong is not the end of the world. You're not
No.
going to die. You're probably not going to jail, depending on what you were wrong about,
Right.
but it's going to be okay.
Yeah. And the other part of that is embrace, and this is a mindset, of course, embracing humility, and so being grateful for the chance to learn and grow because you were wrong. Like that's a mindset shift that can have vast improvements in your relationships, but also your just overall growth and learning potential.
Yeah. And then, modeling behavior, sharing with others when your mind has been changed, new information to encourage,
Yep.
kind of that culture. I think it's important, and I love this with especially like my kids. When I'm wrong, I like to say, "Thanks for pointing that out." Like
Yeah.
I'm smarter now because,
Yeah.
you helped me through this, right?
Yeah.
And that's great to do with employees. That's great to do with people, but really, showing other people that it's okay to be wrong. There's humility in that, right? It's okay
Yeah.
to be wrong,
Hmm.
and thanking them for, helping you through that path. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and especially like the stage that your kids are at right now. Your daughters are, teenagers, and that can be tough. But what happens is they are learning at a very fast pace, and we all make mistakes as parents. And then all of a sudden, you being able to admit your mistake is just builds the trust with them, and then they're going to be more willing to admit mistakes to you because you started it, you modeled it, you showed your child, even though they're coming up on adulthood, how to behave, how
Yeah,
to be human, basically, and
yeah,
that is so huge because you go from when they're small being their superhero and you can't do anything wrong and dad's the best, mom's the best, all of this to oh, they're just human like me. They make mistakes like me, and that's something that you have to work on in your mind as a parent to shift into that slowly, of course, not all at
yeah.
once.
It's
Yeah.
funny. I'm teaching my oldest how to drive, and we were in the car, and she did something, and I said, "No, no, no, no! Like that's not how you do that." Because number one, remember I took my driving test 30 years ago, so it's been
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah.
But because I thought that's how you were supposed to do it, and because that's how I've been doing it for 30 years,
Whoops.
hopefully nobody who has a pull here would listen to this. Um, but she said, no, 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 like I just took the test and this is how it is. And I said, oh, wow, like that's interesting. Of course, I didn't just believe her. I had to look it up first,
Of course,
but
yeah.
because that's what phones are for.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, absolutely. So, I learned something.
Uh-huh.
Thank God it was nothing that was like earth shattering, but it was a little driving
Like
detail.
red means go? Wasn't
Right.
anything
Like
like
red,
that?
yeah, just blow through the yellows. That's fine. Yellow means accelerate.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I think this is great. But let's go back to our action steps just to
Yeah.
review because I think, really finding that clarity to help you achieve results by overcoming your ego is such a good step. Don't
Hmm.
I'm going to say that quote again. Don't let your need to be right be
Hmm.
more important than your need to find out what's true. Okay, so
Right.
number one, practicing that I could be wrong mentality, right? Acknowledging the
Yep.
possibility that you aren't perfect and you might be wrong, changing your goal from winning to learning, and just moving on with that.
Step two talks about focus on understanding, not just arguing. And within those are steps of active listening, asking clarifying questions, and then summarizing their points for greater clarity.
And then the last one, see your mistakes and disagreements as opportunity. Great word. Opportunities, right? Those
Mm-hmm.
problems become opportunities. View being wrong as a win. Be a lifelong learner. Take those
Mm-hmm.
mistakes and move them into new things. Embrace that humility. And then teach, like, show other people, right? Leadership by example. Show other people how to be wrong gracefully,
Yep.
and be grateful for those lessons. And that wraps up this episode of the Achieve Results Now podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody. I hope people go out and have great conversations with people today, without massive disagreements. And I hope you learn some stuff.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening. Hop over to our website at www.achieveresultsnow.com to get your free copy of our book, Ignite Results, 4 specific daily actions to help you achieve results now. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Achieve Results Now. Thanks for listening, commenting, and subscribing. Now get out there and achieve results now.